Universitas Lelemuku Saumlaki, impianmu yang telah menjadi nyata. Penyangga dan pengharu bagi Ibu Pertiwi. Kami putra dan putri Indonesia, ingin siap berpacu ke masa yang datang. Panji suci UNLESA, kami siapkan diri. Berjuanglah terus, saya memandangmu. Siapkanlah insan cerdas yang berilmu. Insan yang cemerlang bergerakkanmu, serta siap berprestasi bagi bangsa. Majulah, alma materku, majulah, tebarkan pesonamu. Semerbak bagaikan kembang lelemuku yang mengharumkan bangsa. Berjuanglah terus, saya memandangmu. Siapkanlah insan cerdas yang berilmu. Insan yang cemerlang bergerakkanmu, serta siap berprestasi bagi bangsa. Majulah, alma materku, majulah, tebarkan pesonamu. Semerbak bagaikan kembang lelemuku yang mengharumkan bangsa.
Stop.
Universitas Lelemuku Saumlaki, impianmu yang telah menjadi nyata. Penyangga dan pengharu bagi Ibu Pertiwi. Kami putra dan putri Indonesia, ingin siap berpacu ke masa yang datang. Panji suci UNLESA, kami siapkan diri. Berjuanglah terus, saya memandangmu. Berjuanglah terus, saya memanggilmu. Siapa lain cerdas yang berilmu, insan yang cemerlang bergerak terenggu, serta siap berprestasi bagi bangsa. Majulah, alma mater majulah, tebarkan pesonamu. Semerbak bagaikan kembang lelemuku yang mengharumkan bangsa. Berjuanglah terus, saya memanggilmu. Siapa lain cerdas yang berilmu, insan yang cemerlang bergerak terenggu, serta siap berprestasi bagi bangsa. Majulah, alma mater majulah, tebarkan pesonamu. Semerbak bagaikan kembang lelemuku yang mengharumkan bangsa. Universitas Lelemuku Saumlaki, impianmu yang telah menjadi nyata. Penyangga dan pahlawan bagi ibu pertiwi. Kami putra dan putri Indonesia, ini siap berpacu ke masa yang datang. Panji suci UNLESA, kami siapkan diri. Berjuanglah terus, saya memanggilmu. Siapa lain cerdas yang berilmu, insan yang cemerlang bergerak terenggu, serta siap berprestasi bagi bangsa. Majulah, alma mater majulah, tebarkan pesonamu. Semerbak bagaikan kembang lelemuku yang mengharumkan bangsa. Berjuanglah terus, saya memanggilmu. Siapa lain cerdas yang berilmu, insan yang cemerlang bergerak terenggu, serta siap berprestasi bagi bangsa. Majulah, alma mater majulah, tebarkan pesonamu. Semerbak bagaikan kembang lelemuku yang mengharumkan bangsa.
Good morning, Mrs. Fanoembi.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
How's your night, Miss?
Very good.
Oh, okay. We're still waiting for the lectures and also the other participants to join us.
Okay, let's wait a few minutes.
Okay.
I do hear a little bit of echo if I speak.
Oh, yeah. We will ask the team to handle it.
Ya Mas Andi, udah ini. Ilmu anak sana wajib. Kita mau bersih jadi. Hampir apa? Yang
Jam
apa
4
lewat?
loh, 4.
Lu sih tim satu orang. Mana dong lah?
Informasi untuk Zoom tidak bisa masuk.
Halo Noah. Oh, Noah cannot hear my voice.
So Noah is at his work now, so he can see, he cannot say
Oh, yeah.
anything because he is working now.
Lucu jadinya.
Tomorrow he can also be in the seminar. So.
I think we will start in 10 minutes, ma'am.
Pas pun nggak tahu apa itu.
Fanoembi.
Yes.
We are about to start our international webinar for today, but we're still waiting for the other lectures and also some students because they will join us for the second time here. And then we're still waiting also for Miss Rani as MC for conducting this webinar. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So as information that you have 2 hours, around 2 hours to do presentation, and also we will have some sessions for answer some questions.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Makan nasi. Betul kah? Iya betul. Betul nih kak, betul. Serius sekali. Kan mati. Cuma itu pukul 4 kemarin ini. Harus itu. Kamu.
Okay, well, good afternoon to everyone and also good morning to Ms. Fanoembi.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Miss.
Okay, let me check that every one of you or all the participants can hear my voice clearly. Okay.
Yes, Miss.
We are about to start our second days of international webinar, and today we still have the same discussion or presentation that will be delivered by Mrs. Dr. A.J.F.M. Fanoembi van der Kerkhof S.H.M.H. And today she will share the very interesting presentation for us, especially about what is ASML. And for now, I give the time to Mrs. Fanoembi for
Yes.
giving us the information more about ASML. So time is yours, Mrs. Fanoembi.
Okay. Yes. Let me see if I can share my screen, because I think I can do that now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, we can see.
Okay. Then let me start. So maybe before I begin, so you are all law students, and after you complete studies, of course you will find a job, and you can choose various jobs. If I look in the Netherlands, what the law students are doing when they finish their school, they go to work, for instance, in a law firm. Many people go to work in a law firm. Other people choose to work for the government, also making the laws. On Monday, I explained the process of how we make laws in the Netherlands. So you can imagine that if so many laws need to be made, also people having the law education are needed in the government to all prepare those laws. Or you can become a judge, or maybe work in the public prosecution office. So a lot of people choose that as a job, but also a lot of people choose to work in a company, because many big companies and also middle-sized companies, they have their own legal department, and that their people are working that basically handle all the legal matters of companies. And if you work in a company, that is called an in-house legal counsel. And then basically you are like the also the advisor to the board of directors of a company, and you have to make sure that the company stays out of trouble, that everything is arranged well. If the company does business, that you abide by all the rules and the regulations that there are, that the right contracts are in place. And when I completed my studies, I immediately went to work for a company. So I did not go to a law firm. I did not want to become a judge or work for the government. I immediately started working for a company. In the beginning, I worked for a very small company, but after 1 year, I already started to work for ASML. And I will now tell you a little bit about ASML, because it's maybe not a very well-known company in Indonesia, but I think a very important company because of the products that we make. So let me first show you how it all started. The company ASML started in 1984, and it was basically set up by two other companies, Philips and a company called ASM, so not ASML, but ASM. And they together started a company. And you here see the first office building of ASML, which is a small cabin on the Philips campus. And there were only 31 people at the time working there. And it was really a new technology that they were looking into, and that was making machines to produce computer chips. And at the time, there were some companies who were already doing this. For instance, a company in Japan called Nikon, which you all probably know from the photo cameras, but they also made these machines for the computer chips. But in the Netherlands, it all started very small, as you can see. And if we then now make a trip through time and we go to what ASML looks like now, I'll show you on the next page. This is what the little shed of 1984 now is, a very big campus where you see the tall building at the right. That is the main office, and all the rest are the factories and all the office buildings. And it's really a big campus in Veldhoven. And we're now actually, we started as a very small company, but we are now the biggest company in our business. So we have really been very successful in developing the machines. It's very, very difficult. It's we have very smart people working on this, but we made it a success. And the company now, if I show you the next page, we have almost 40,000 people, and we're now also working across the whole world. As you see, we have the main office in Veldhoven near Eindhoven, which is in the middle part. And there we have the most employees in the Netherlands, and also the most important factories. But you see that we also have factories in the USA, in San Francisco and San Diego, and also in Wilton. But we also have factories in Asia, in China, and in Taiwan. And also all our customers are in Europe, in the USA, and in Asia. So that's a very big worldwide operating company, where we basically have half of the people in Europe and in the Netherlands, and the rest of the people all over the world. We have also offices in Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, and then in Europe we have in Germany, Italy, France, UK, and there because the big chip producing companies are located there, we also have offices there. So it's a lot of offices in many different countries. And that makes that ASML is a very international company. We have in the company over 115 different nationalities. So if you would come in our headquarters and you would go to our company restaurant, you would hear all kinds of languages: English, Dutch, Spanish, Chinese, and also Bahasa Indonesia even, because we also have people from Indonesia working in the company. So that's a very very nice, because you learn a lot about other people and other cultures by working in this company. This is a bit of a difficult picture, but it shows you basically where all the companies that are the customers of ASML. We are in the top left row together with some other companies, and we all make machines that can produce computer chips. And we all make machines for one step of this chip producing process, because it's many steps, and I will show you in a minute what the steps are. But ASML is one of them, and our customers are the companies that actually produce the chips, and one of the biggest clients of us is Samsung. Samsung also makes the telephones, the TVs, the washing machines. You probably know the company, but they also make their own chips. So we sell to Samsung, but also to Intel, or that's a big company from the USA, but also to TSMC, which is in Taiwan. So these companies all make computer chips, and these computer chips, of course, go into the computers. So for instance, you see in the gray area of this diagram, you see, for instance, Cisco, HP, Lenovo, Fujitsu. Those are the big companies that make the electronic devices where the chips have to go into. And then below on the bottom side of this chart, you see what we call the platform companies, like Google, Facebook, but you can also see, for instance, TikTok there. Those are the companies that basically have the web-based services for people, which also need a lot of chips, because what we are now doing, for instance, a Zoom meeting, that's all data that is going over the internet. And for this, you need a lot of servers and data centers, and that all needs computer chips. So if the company like ASML wasn't here, we would not be able to do this Zoom seminar, because we would not have the right chips for it, basically. There's also a lot of money going around in this whole ecosystem, what we call. And if you see on the right-hand side, the chart, you see how this business has grown. It has grown from 2016 to 2021 by 19%, and that's really a lot. And the reason why it's also this high is because companies keep on developing new devices like iPads, tablets, mobile phones, smartphones, but also the Zoom meetings, the TikTok apps, that all needs chips. And that's why this market has been so booming. And the COVID-19 even made this more booming, because when COVID was here, people couldn't meet each other again. They could not travel, so everyone was using the Zoom or the Teams meetings, and that led to a whole boom in computer chips. So really, really booming market. Now, this is also a difficult slide, but it tries to explain how a computer chip is made, where ASML machines play a role. Basically, if you make a computer chip, you need a wafer, and a wafer is, it looks a bit like a round mirror. It's made of silicium. And on that mirror, we basically make a pattern of very small lines, and through these lines you can have power that runs through it, and that makes the chip. And what ASML does, the machines of ASML, is basically making sure that we can make these small lines on the chip. And these lines, they are made in various layers. So the first layer, it goes in the machine, then these lines are printed on it, and then there's a whole process afterwards, and you see it on the slide. Then it's the baking and developing, the etching. So it is a whole circle that the chip or the wafer needs to go through. And then it comes back again, and then the second layer is made. So each wafer goes through all the machines in the factory, maybe 40 or 50 times. And then all these layers are made on top of each other. And then you have a very good computer chip. But the most difficult part is to make sure all the layers are put exactly on top of each other because they need to be connected. And if they are not connected, then the chip doesn't work. So it's very, very difficult technology because the lines are very small. We call the size nanometer. And a nanometer, you can compare that to if you take a hair, a human hair, it's 1,000th part of a hair. So you cannot see it with your eye. You need to have a microscope to see it. So small are these lines. So therefore, it's also a very difficult machine to make. And we have a lot of people who studied physics or other technical studies who are really like the smart professors who have to all make this machine work. And then this is just a little bit of pictures to show how these machines look. So if you look at the first picture on the left-hand side, that is in our factory, the people working on the machine. And what you immediately see is that they are wearing white suits. And the white suits, that's because this is a clean room. And it means that the air in the clean room should be very clean and there should be no dust or the hair from people, because if that goes into the machine, it doesn't work anymore. So all the people that work in our factory need to wear these clean room suits to make sure that the machine stays clean. And as you see, it's also a very big machine. So it's a really complicated thing to make. Then in the middle, you see the inside of the machine when it's basically ready. So that's what it looks like on the inside. But on the outside, it's just the right-hand side. You don't see that much. It's a huge machine. If we have to send the machine from our factory to the customer, we need 7 airplanes because the machine is so heavy that you need to take it apart again, put it in boxes, and then put it in 7 airplanes because otherwise the airplane cannot carry the weight of this machine. So it's really, really a special machine. Then for a company like ASML, of course, it is very important that our business is good and that we have a lot of profits because we want to continue our business as long as possible, have many clients that we sell our machines to. That's all very important also to be able to continue working on these machines and continue to make even better machines and newer machines that can do more. But nowadays, if you work in a company, at least in Europe where we are located, what is also important is not only the financial part of the business, but also that you are acting as a responsible company. And responsible means that you also need to take care of the environment and of social, meaning taking good care of the people. So all the companies in Europe, they nowadays have a strategy for what we call ESG. E is environment, S is social, and G is governance. And I will tell a little bit more about governance in a minute. But if you talk about the environment, in my presentation of Monday, I already mentioned that there is a Paris Treaty that countries have agreed on to basically reduce the global warming and to make sure that we stop the climate change and that we do not have all these natural disasters like floodings, etc. Also, companies look at this Paris Treaty, and they all also want to help in making this the world basically a better place. And they all have also their own ambitions and goals for ESG. And if we look at ASML, we also have a strategy for ESG, and it's made up of 9 themes. We have 2 themes under the environment. We have 4 themes under the social. We have 3 themes under the governance. The first theme under the environment is energy efficiency and climate action. And that means that we want to basically have 0 greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. So 2040 is a long time ahead, but we are working to, for instance, to make our products use less energy, so that the total energy consumption goes down, not only in our own factory, but also if our customers use our machines. We want to bring that down so that we in this way can help to stop the global warming. Because these emissions, if they don't go down, then we will have the global warming continuing, and it will lead to really natural disasters. So as a company, we want to help this by also having this emissions target. Then the second one is circular economy, and that means basically that we do not want to throw things away. For instance, if we have parts that we use in our machines and they are wrapped in plastic, we don't throw that plastic in the waste bin, but we want to recycle it. So we want to collect everything and recycle it, so there is no waste. Also, if we sell our machines and some part of the machine is broken, then we do not throw it away. We take it back and we will see if we can repair it, and then we can use it again. And if we cannot repair it, we will not throw it in the garbage bin, but we want to make sure that all the materials are recycled. So in that way, we want to make sure that we use also the raw materials, that we do not use too many, because in the end, if you use too many, there's nothing left. So you need to recycle all these materials. So that's also a way in which we want to help. If we then look at the social part, the first is the attractive workplace. For a company like ASML, we now have almost 40,000 people, but we need to make sure, if we want to continue our business, we need the very clever people coming to work for ASML. And we need people from the whole world, because there are not enough people in the Netherlands. So we want to have people from all over the world. And therefore we want to be really be a good place to work. Because otherwise, if, for instance, you live in Indonesia and you need to move to the Netherlands to work for ASML, it must be a really good place, because otherwise you will not leave your home and your family to work in such a far place. So that's where we spent a lot of time also to have a good working place, to have the houses for the people, etc., etc. Then we have a responsible supply chain. You just saw the big machine that we make, and a lot of the parts in the machine are made by other companies, and that's called our supply chain. So we buy from the companies those parts, and we want to make sure that the way that we operate is also the way that these other companies operate. So they also need to make sure that they have plans for energy efficiency and climate, that they also do their recycling of the materials, etc., etc. So we do not only want to do this ourselves, but we also take along on this journey the companies in our supply chain. Then we have the innovation ecosystem. That means that what ASML is doing is really innovation, technological innovation. And we need very smart people for that. And also people who have just new ideas on technology. And that's called the innovation ecosystem. We try to support those ideas. So if someone has a really good idea for a technology, he can set up a company and he could come to ASML and say, hey, I have this great idea, and that may also be a very good technology that ASML could use. Then we could give money to that company to help and make this a success. So because we earn a lot of money, so we also want to give back money to help other companies also with their business. And then number 6 is valued partner in our communities. What that means is that as a company, we are part of the community. So in Veldhoven, we are part of the village. And we also want to be acting like a responsible citizen in our community. It means that we give also financial support to the communities where we are, for instance, in education or building houses or by charity. So we also have a foundation that has charity products in all over the world, actually. So we try to also not just keep all the money for ourselves, but also give it back to people around us that need that money also for because they can not be as successful themselves. And then on governance, governance is basically, if you talk about ESG governance, it's about how we want to make sure that we can achieve these environmental and social goals that we have. So we want to really make sure that in every decision that the company takes, that we also think about the environment and about the social part, that we talk to our stakeholders. That means that we talk to our employees, our customers, our suppliers, and our shareholders to also make sure that we take into account their views and interests. And we want to give a lot of information about ASML to basically also show what we are doing in this area and to be transparent about it. So that's a bit on ESG. And why do I spend so much time on ESG? Because I think this is really one of the most important topics for the future. You are all the young generation, and what we see in Europe, in our company at least, is that the generation of your age, like people in their early 20s, they really start thinking about, okay, how can we take care of our planet Earth? Because we see that if we continue as we are doing now, things will not go in the right direction. There is a lot of damage to the environment, and there's also a lot of inequality between people in the West who are maybe quite rich and people in other places who are not that well off. So that's also something that is maybe seen as not fair. So you really see that there's a change in views. It used to be all about making as much money as possible, but I think that has changed now. And all the people I talk to, also, for instance, big shareholders, they all find ESG very important. So I think for you as young people, it's very good to be aware of this also, and it will be an important topic if you start working as a lawyer, I think, to also do the business in a responsible way. Let me see if I then go to the next page. This is a little bit about the company again, ASML, and the governance of ASML. And what does governance mean in this slide? It means that how the company is run, who takes the decisions, and how do we do that? So in the governance, ASML is listed on the stock exchange in Amsterdam and in New York. So you can go to the stock exchange and you can buy a share of ASML, and then you are partly the owner of ASML. So if you buy one share, you have part of the company is owned by you. But of course, if you own the company, we have hundreds of shareholders. They do not, they are not in the company, and they do not take the decisions to run the business. That is done by the board of management. You see that in the light blue box. The board of management is really the group of men that is managing the company on a day-to-day business. They are all the day in meetings, and they take the important decisions about ASML. And above the board of management, you see the supervisory board. They really supervise the board of management to see if they indeed take the right decisions. And this is basically how it works. So it's like a triangle. You have the shareholders, the board of management, and the supervisory board. And basically, as I said, the board of management is the one that is basically taking all the decisions and running the company on a day-to-day basis. The supervisory board, they are the bosses of the board of management, and they come to ASML about 6 times per year, and then there's a big meeting, and then the board of management has to present what decisions they have taken, and also what decisions they want to take in the future. And then the supervisory board says, well, you've done a good job and we agree with all the decisions, then it's okay. And then 1 time per year, there's the general meeting. Then all the shareholders can come to Veldhoven, or they can also do it online like we are doing now. And then the board of management and the supervisory board will be there. And the shareholders can ask all the questions they want about the company, and they also need to take some decisions, because some decisions the shareholders can take. So that's one meeting per year. And this year the meeting is on April 26. And I and my team, we are responsible for the whole organization of this general meeting. It's a very big meeting. So in the Netherlands, we have what is called the stakeholder model. It means that, as I already explained, if you work in a Dutch company, you cannot just say, well, I just want to make as much money as possible and become as rich as possible as director of ASML. That's not the way it works. Of course, the financial performance is important, because it also makes sure that there is enough money to continue to have the company. But there are also, we call it stakeholders, that are groups of people that we also need to think about when we do our business. For instance, the shareholders. The shareholders have invested their money in ASML, and they also want ASML to take care of their investment, basically, and make sure that they also get return. Because, for instance, if the share price is higher and it increases because we are doing well, that's good for the shareholders. And they also can get part of the profit we pay back to the shareholders for making the money available. That's called dividend. Then we have our customers. We really need to think about what do our customers need in the future, and then we have to make sure that we make the right products for our customers. So we really need to have a good conversations with our customers about their future plans, which technology do they need, because for us it can take years to make a new machine. So if the customers say we need a new type of machine, then we really need to know that a couple of years in advance to be able to get that done. We also have society. As I said, we are part of the world that we have we operate in, basically, and we also want to be a responsible citizen. So society, that can be, for instance, the municipality where we are. If we are in Veldhoven, for instance, where our main office is, there's always a lot of traffic. And the traffic is not very nice for the people that live in Veldhoven. So then we have to talk to the municipality, to the town of Veldhoven, and say, okay, how can we help to make sure that the traffic situation gets better, and that, for instance, the people in Veldhoven do not have to stand in the long line of cars every day, but that we come and find a solution together with our society. So society is also a very important stakeholder, and it's not one person. It can be the municipality, but it can also be the national government, or it can be an NGO, meaning an organization that represents a certain interest group. So it can be, society is very broad. It can be many different people. Our suppliers, I already mentioned that we buy a lot of parts from other companies, and we also need to make sure that we take these suppliers along. For instance, if we find out that we need to produce more machines, it means that our suppliers also need to produce more parts. So we need really also with the suppliers need a very good conversation to make sure that they know how many parts that they have to supply to ASML. And they also a lot of times have to hire new people, they have to make investments in factories. So also there they need to know that a couple of years before, otherwise there's not enough time to basically do that. The creditors, that means the people that we owe money, that's also an important stakeholder. There in the Dutch law, there are also rules that protect creditors. So if we take certain decisions, we need to make sure that the creditors are also okay with those. So that's also an important group. And then maybe, I would not say the most important group, but one of the most important groups is the employees. Because without the smart people that we have, we would not be able to make all these machines. So employees is a very important group of stakeholders. We need to make sure that we are a good company to work for, that people want to work for ASML, and that they also want to stay working in ASML. So even if we can get the people in, we also need to make sure that they will want to stay in ASML. So we do a lot of work to make sure that people are happy in their work. So that's basically the stakeholder model, and that's then the nice link maybe to the law, because this stakeholder model is in the Dutch law. So if you are a director of ASML and you are taking a decision, you need to constantly think, okay, is this a good decision for my stakeholders, for my shareholders, for my customers, for all the stakeholders in this picture? And maybe a decision is good for one stakeholder, but not for the other. Then it becomes difficult, because then you have to basically say, okay, in this particular decision or situation, which stakeholder is more important? Which decision do I take? And those are sometimes the difficult decisions that the directors have to take. If they would not take into consideration the stakeholders, I think they could get in trouble. Some stakeholders could go to the courts and say, well, directors of ASML, you really have not done a good job. And as a stakeholder, you did not consider my interests. So I think you have done mismanagement. It's basically you have not done a good job and you need to compensate me for that. So that is basically also why the directors are always discussing with each other, okay, what does this decision mean for my stakeholders and what is the best thing to do in this situation? Also because they think it's the right thing to do, but also because by law they need to do it like this, otherwise they get in trouble themselves. So that's when also the law comes looking around the corner and playing a role. Now, who then are these directors of ASML? These basically are the 5 people who are now in the board of directors. In ASML, we call it the board of management. But these are the 5 people that on a day-to-day basis run the company. The CEO, president and CEO is Peter Wenning. That's basically the general president of ASML. He's also the chairman of the board of management. Martin van der Brink, we call him the president and CTO. He is the smartest person in the company, I think. He is the person who is responsible for all the technology in ASML. So all the complicated stuff you saw in the machine, that's his, he has responsibility for that. Then the third one is Roger Dasse, and he is the chief financial officer, meaning that he is responsible for all the financial numbers. So he needs to ensure that if we do the business that we earn money with that. And then we have Christophe Fouquet, who is responsible for the business line. So he is basically responsible for all the products that we make. And then we have Frédéric Schneider-Monory, and he is responsible for the manufacturing and the supply chain part. So making sure that the way we make our machines is the best way, that we get the right parts in the company from our suppliers, that we do the right planning, etc. So these are the 5 people that on a day-to-day in a day-to-day manner run the business. Of course, they do not do this alone, because it would be a little bit too much for 5 people to take all the decisions in the company. So under the board of management, there are a lot of other people as well who are managers and who have certain responsibility. For instance, you have someone who is responsible for the sales to customers. You have someone who is responsible for the factories. You have someone who is responsible for the supply chain. You have someone who is responsible for the people, so the human resources, that's what we call. So we have a lot of leaders and managers below the board of management that all help in managing the company. And in the end, they have to also report to the board of management on how they are doing and if they make good progress. But the board of management is the one, basically they are responsible. And then we have the supervisory board. So the supervisory board, they are really coming in like 6 times per year, and they are all people from other companies. Some are already retired, but they all used to work in big companies in the past, and they all have different expertise. For instance, Mr. Schwalb, who you see here on the bottom row, and then the second from the right, he used to be a CFO in a company, so a chief financial officer. So he really can supervise how ASML is doing financially. And for instance, Mr. Mark Durkin, he used to work at one of our customers, so he really knows the technology very well. And also the the business that we are in. So he can really supervise the board of management very well in this area. So we here have a very diverse group of 9 people. Ms. Gerard Kleistle is the chairman, and Ms. Annette Ares is the vice chair. And yeah, so they meet 6 times per year. They also have all kinds of committees. We have 4 committees, so it's not only the supervisory board as a group, but we also have committees which have then 3 or 4 supervisory board members. We have a financial committee that's called the audit committee. We have a technology committee, a remuneration committee that's about the pay, the salaries of the board of management members. And we have a selection and nomination committee, and the selection and nomination committee is about, okay, who should be on the board of management and who should be on the supervisory board, because these 2 boards are really the most important boards in the company, because they really need to make sure that the company is running well and is properly supervised to be able to continue to work as successfully as it does. Let me see. Then I zoom into the ASML legal department. As I said, most or all big companies actually have a legal department, and ASML has that too. We are called the Legal and Compliance Department, and the head of our department is the Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer, and she is called Sandrine Offret. It's a lady. She is originally from France, and she moved to the Netherlands to work for ASML. She is a very nice lady. She has a husband and 3 kids, and she's a very small lady, but she has a strong will. So she is what we call a power woman, really leading the legal and compliance department with a good vision. We have about 80 people now working in the legal and compliance department, but you can imagine that ASML has 40,000 people. So 80 people in the legal and compliance department is not that much actually, and we also will hire new people. So maybe by the end of this year or next year we will have even 100 people, because the company ASML, you saw what it looked like in the beginning and what it looks like now, but we still continue to grow. So the work will become more and more and more, and therefore also the legal and compliance department will become bigger. We are working in 6 countries on 3 continents. The countries are USA, Netherlands, Germany, China, Korea, Taiwan. And the 3 continents then are the America, North America, Europe, and Asia. And we also, the legal department is a very diverse team. So I said already in the beginning that over 150 nationalities are working in ASML. In the legal and compliance department, we do not have someone from Indonesia, unfortunately, but we have, of course, people from the Netherlands. We have someone from Germany. We have people from Spain. We have people from Brazil. We have people from Korea, Taiwan. What else do we have? I think also Portuguese, Romanian. So we have a lot of diversity. We have someone who is 64, but we also have people just out of university. So also in terms of age, it's very diverse. So it's a very nice team to work in, because there are many different people and they all have their own perspective. So it's really a nice environment to be in. And what then does the team look like? So I said already, we have the head of our team is Sandrine, who is the Chief Legal Officer. Then I am the deputy company secretary. You see that there. Then we have someone who is the head of legal strategy and operations, and that is basically a person who is responsible for the strategy of our department. So how do we want to work? What are the priorities for our team? And also the operations, which tools and processes do we have? And how can we make sure we work in a good way in the department? Then we have head of corporate, head of commercial, head of ethics and compliance, head of L&C, so head of legal and compliance in the US, head of legal and compliance in China, and head of legal and compliance rest of Asia. And on the next slide, I will explain a little bit what these are doing. But basically what you see here is the leadership team or the management team of the legal and compliance department. So, and below, so below these boxes, there are many more people who are working in these teams on the topics that are relevant there. So you see that it's quite a big management team for the legal department. We have a meeting on a weekly basis. We had our meeting yesterday. It's usually 1.5 hours, and then together with all the colleagues, we discuss the relevant matters for our department, and we take the decisions that we need to take. For instance, how many new people do we need? What are our priority areas for the year? Which targets do we have to focus on? How do we make sure that we train our people? So all kinds of topics that are relevant for our department, we discuss as a leadership team, and we take the decisions on that. And then we all have to make sure that in our teams, the people also know about the decisions and that they can do their work in a good way also to take into account these decisions. Then I give a little bit of an idea on how, or what type of work is being done in all these teams, that you get a little bit of a feeling of what it means to work in a company, in a big company. And I think these are activities that you will see also in smaller companies, but yeah, it gives a little bit of an idea of, if you start working in a company as a lawyer, what are the types of work that you will be doing. So my team, to begin with, is the company secretary team. It means that we are responsible for the corporate governance, and the corporate governance, that's basically all the rules that we have to follow. They are in the law, in the company law, basically. For instance, how does the supervisory board function? How many times do they meet? If they meet, we make sure that there is an agenda for the meeting and that we take notes of the meeting and make a report of it, because that's all mandatory. And we need to make sure that if there are decisions taken, that the decisions are properly communicated to the right people, that if there are action items, that we take the actions, etc., etc. So we have to make sure that all these meetings are organized, prepared, and followed up, not only for the supervisory board, but also for the board of management, and also the shareholders meeting that is 1 time per year. And there are all kinds of rules in the law that we need to observe when we do these meetings. And that's really important, because if you do not observe the rules well, it could be that the decision is not valid. So then you are in trouble, basically. And the purpose we have is to keep the company and the directors out of trouble. So we need to make sure that we do everything according to the rules. To give you a bit of an idea, the number of meetings that I attend and that we have to prepare and make the notes of and do the follow-up is around 65 meetings per year. So it's about half of it is the supervisory board and the other half is the board of management. The supervisory board and all the committees. So it's quite a lot, because these meetings, usually the board of management meetings last 4 hours and the supervisory board meetings last 8 hours. and the committee meetings last usually 3 hours. So if you would then make a calculation, there's a lot of hours going into being in those meetings and doing all the work for that. The corporate team, corporate means that it has to do with, for instance, the rules of the stock exchange. As I said, you can go to the stock exchange and buy an ASML share. So the shares are traded on the stock exchange, and the stock exchanges, they also have their rules that you need to follow. It also, for instance, means that sometimes you have to make a press release if there's important news. For instance, the financial results are known, then the rules say that you have to make that public in a press release. So then the corporate team helps to basically to make the press release, to make sure that all the rules are followed. We also have in ASML, in every country where we are, we also have a separate company in that country. So for instance, in the US, we have ASML US Inc. In Italy, we have ASML Italy SRL. And all these companies also have their own legal rules of that country. So we also need to make sure that all these rules in the separate countries are followed. We cannot do that all ourselves because we don't have someone working in all these countries. So then we have a law firm that helps us there to make sure that we follow the rules. Then sometimes we have mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions basically means that sometimes we take over another company. We do not do that a lot, but sometimes we do. And the last time was when we bought a company in Germany. And those are always very big projects because you have to, with that company, you have to make a contract, you have to make sure that you have the right price. The company you buy always wants to have the price as high as possible, and ASML always, of course, wants to have the price as low as possible. So that's always a lot of negotiation and a lot of also due diligence procedures to make sure that we know what we are buying. So we always do a lot of asking questions, looking into documents to make sure that the company is not into trouble. And if we buy it, then we get into trouble. And then the last thing in the corporate team is employment law. That's basically everything that has to do with the people. So the labor contracts, if there is, if it also happens that we need to fire someone, well, that's not always very nice, but it does happen. So then the employment law team comes in. So that's also, with the 40,000 people, it's an important area of law where there's a lot of work to do always. Then we have the commercial team, and the commercial team is the team that helps the company basically in all the contracts that we have to make. We have to make contracts with our customers, and we do not have many customers. You saw in the chart which I showed, you saw, for instance, Samsung and TSMC. We don't have many customers, but our tools are very expensive. So the number of contracts with the customers is not that high, but the value of the contract is always very high. So those are very important contracts. Also with the suppliers, we buy a lot of parts for our system. So we have a lot of suppliers. I think a couple of hundred suppliers. So with every supplier, we need to have a contract. So that's hundreds of contracts. It's also a lot of work that we need to do. And then we have R&D partners, and R&D means research and development. Because we have this very difficult, complicated technology, we also work together with, for instance, a university to do some studies and research into our field of expertise. So we also then need a contract with a university to work together on certain projects. And then we have litigation. Litigation means a court case. We do not have many court cases, but sometimes we do. We never, we are not very active. Sometimes we get sued by a company, that happens, but it's not often. So the litigation work is not really a lot, but yeah, in many other companies, this is a big department. But luckily in ASML's case so far, we do not have much litigation. It's also because we have very good relationships with our partners, our customers and our suppliers. And we all think that the solution to go to court is really not a good solution. We always try to go into negotiations and then come to a solution and not go to the judge for that. So that's a bit the way our ecosystem works. Then we have the ethics and compliance team. What does that mean? Ethics means that you, in the company, you work in a responsible way, also with integrity. For instance, there's no discrimination in the workplace. You do not harass people. That's also forbidden. We have a code of conduct which give the rules for how do you need to act if you work in a company like ASML. What do we expect from you? And this code of conduct, of course, sometimes in a company of 40,000 people, you can imagine that sometimes someone who doesn't act in accordance with the code of conduct, and then we have an ethics team. So we have ethics cases, and in the ethics team we also do a lot of training for the people. For instance, we do a training on our code of conduct to see, okay, these are the rules that we have agreed as a company that everyone working here needs to follow, and then we do a training about it, and then the people know what to do, and they also know that if a colleague doesn't follow these rules, that they have a team that they can go to and that they can report and say, hey, this person doesn't follow the rules and I am suffering from that, so please can you help to solve this? And then what this team also does is compliance. And compliance means that there are certain laws that we need to abide by and comply with. And for instance, these are ABC, and that means anti-bribery and corruption. So there are rules for ASML to make sure that there's no corruption. And the rules also say ASML and other companies need to have a project to make sure that you don't break these corruption rules, that there's no corruption. And therefore we have in this team, we have a whole program which is called ABC compliance. And there's a lot of stuff that we need to do there to make sure that we meet all the rules. And there is also someone from the government who can then come and see, okay, ASML, show us what did you do to prevent corruption? Let me see which projects you have and if you've done a good job. And if you don't do a good job, you can get a fine. So that's very important. And we do not only have that in the corruption area, but also export control. That is what EC stands for. For instance, if we want to send a tool to China, sometimes we need an export license because there are certain rules there, and if you violate those rules, you can also get fines from the government. So you don't want that. So also there we have the projects in place to make sure that we follow all the rules. And the same is for antitrust. And I don't know if you know what that means, but I can explain briefly. This means that ASML is a commercial company that is operating in a market. And what is good for the market if there's competition. So if there are also other companies selling the same products, because then you will, the way it works is that a company cannot just make the products very expensive, because then people will go to the other company. So then it makes sure that the companies that are doing business do that in a fair way, also for the people that need to buy their products. Now, it can be that in the case of ASML, there are not too many other companies to go to if you want to buy these tools. So we have quite a powerful position there. It's not that Samsung can just go to a different company to buy their machines. And that means that we are more powerful. We could more easily increase our prices because the customer does not have too many other choices. But this is forbidden. So the rules on antitrust basically say that we need to stay fair and that we cannot misuse our position if we have a large part of the market, that we cannot misuse that. And also here the authorities can come in and they can look at what our business practices are, and if we do not operate in a fair way according to the government, then we can get a big fine. And this is a reality because, for instance, Facebook and Google have gotten very big fines in Europe because the European government basically found that they were not doing their business in a fair way. So we also have these programs here and many people working on this to make sure that we do business in an honest and fair way. And then in the country teams, US, China, and Asia, basically they do all the same work that I just mentioned in the other teams, but then for that specific country. So in the US, there will be a commercial person, there will be a corporate person, but they are focused then only on the US, while the other teams are more focused on the headquarters and on the global work. We have that also for China. China is a big country, therefore we made it a separate team. There are also many small customers there, so it's really also a lot of work to do there. And then the Asia team is all the work for Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan. And then finally, the legal strategy and operations team, that's the team basically that makes sure that the department is running smoothly, that we know what the key priorities and the targets are, that we have the right processes in place, the right tools, for instance, a specific IT system that we need. That's all the work that is being done in the strategy and operations team. And that's basically then the whole group of 80 people that works in the legal department. And I think with that, I come to the end of the presentation. So let me see, I can stop sharing now. I think if there is, if some of you have questions, I do see some in the chat. Oh, that's links to Google. Are there any questions about ASML or working in the legal department, or maybe still even questions about the session on Monday that we could not answer at that time?
Okay, Ma'am Fanoembi, I think you shared a very interesting presentation, especially about ASML.
Yes.
Yeah. By this time, we know that ASML is one of the biggest company that create or made chips. And then maybe the first question comes from me. As you mentioned, some countries in the world. And then
yes.
I have question that what is Indonesia is Indonesia a part of ASML or?
So it's part of ASML because we have people from Indonesia working in our company, but we don't have a company in Indonesia, and that's because we only go to countries where there are companies that make the chips. So if in Indonesia there would be a new company saying, hey, I want to start the production of chips and I need to build a factory and I need to put the machines in there to make that work, then they would definitely come to ASML, and then probably we would also come to Indonesia. But we only go to countries where there are chip makers. And if there's no chip maker, then yeah, we do not go there. For instance, a country where they are thinking also about setting up the chip production is India. So we are not in India, but if there would be chip makers in India, we definitely would go there as well. So if there would be a chip maker in Indonesia, we would definitely go there as well. But it's very expensive to make a chip factory. There is a lot of machines needed, not only from ASML, but also from other companies. And really a lot of money is needed if you want to set that up. And in China, for instance, there are a lot of factories because the government gave a lot of money for that. So it might be an idea for the Indonesian government to start also the investment, but it's yeah, it's quite expensive actually, to be honest.
So the possibility thing for making Indonesia a part of ASML is we have to invest.
Yes.
Indonesia have to invest. Okay.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
next,
and of course, if you have smart people coming from the technical universities, they are always welcome to come and work in our company to also work along with us on these very interesting projects.
so I have also some questions here. You mentioned about, as in your presentation, you mentioned about the charity products. ASML has also charity products. So let me know the charity product. Are those charity products correct or shared only for the country that has ASML company, or for all the countries that needed the charity product?
So we have a ASML Foundation which does these charity projects, and it's never in the Netherlands, it's always in other countries. And which countries, I think we first look at the companies where we are established, but we can also look in other countries. But it should always be a project that is related to education. So we really want to focus with our charity projects on education projects, especially for young people.
So I can say that, can us as University of Lelemuku Saumlaki be a part of charity project?
Yeah, I don't know that, because the foundation is so it's quite of an independent foundation, and they have their own procedures. But you could certainly, I will put the link to our website in the chat. And if you look on the website, there you will also see the foundation. And then you can also reach out maybe to the foundation to see if they have projects maybe that could support.
Okay, well, I think I will give the time for all the participants here in our Zoom, if you have questions, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, you may give or you may ask by raising your hand, in this Zoom meeting. If you have questions, and as we say that in the beginning, that you can ask also about the presentation of the last presentation on Monday. It's about, let me see, it's about the introduction of Dutch law.
Yeah.
Introduction to Dutch law.
Yeah.
We have a lot of questions actually on Monday, and you already answered to question, and allow me to read some questions.
Yeah.
Question. The next question is come from Dito. He is also a participant here, and the question is about how do you think about the infraction of the election law and how to counter the infraction of it? That's it. Maybe you can directly answer the question about the infraction of law.
About the elections, you mean? Yes. So the way it works in the Netherlands is every 5 years we can vote for who should be in the parliament, and then so the people who get the most votes, they get in parliament, and they usually are a member of a party. And in the Netherlands we have many different parties, and then they look at, okay, who are the biggest parties, because then they need to make a new government, and then usually the parties that win the elections make the new government. In our parliament there are 150 seats in the second chamber of parliament. So the government also always wants to make sure that they have at least 76 people of parliament from their parties, because then they have the majority. So depending on how many seats each party wins, they then have to make a big negotiation with other parties to make sure they get the support of 76 people at least. And preferably even some more, because the more seats you have in support of you, the easier it gets for you to, as a government, to basically rule the country. And then from those parties, the government is made, so the ministers are selected, and the prime minister is usually the leader of the party that has won the elections. And what do I think of it? I think it's a good system because the people directly can choose the members of parliament. So in that way, the people really have an influence on who will get into parliament, and ultimately indirectly also who will get in the government. So that's a good system. What I do not like about the Dutch system is that we have a lot of small parties. So, and that's because the way the Dutch system works, also small parties maybe can get into parliament. They maybe even only have 1 seat, but then you get a lot of small parties. So then it becomes really difficult to make a government. For instance, if you look at the UK, they have a different system. They only have 2 parties. So, you know, either the one party or the other party wins, and then they just start the government. But in the Netherlands, it's always a very long process. And always, if there are very controversial topics, it can lead to a lot of discussion and also delay. So it makes sometimes that things go very slow in the Netherlands. So that's So there's the good side, and there's also a less good side. But yeah, I mean, it is a democracy, so that's always good, I think, that the people have influence.
Okay, ma'am, thank you for the explanation. And then I have also a questions here, still about the introduction of Dutch law.
Yeah.
As you said on Monday that formal laws are only valid if tested by Council of State or other thing.
Yeah.
The question is how long the formal law are tested by Council of State.
Yeah, usually it is the Council of State looks at the law when it's not implemented yet, but if there is the government wants to introduce a law, then they first have the draft law, which they publish. And then the Council of State looks at it and they give their advice, and then the government can still make some changes. So the Council of State check, and the check by the Crown is always before the law becomes effective. But then also the judge can look at it in hindsight, but then that's usually when the law is already effective, and someone could go to the court and say, hey, I don't think this law is valid because it is in contradiction with another higher law, for instance. And then they can go to the judge, and the judge can say, yes, indeed, you are right. This is not correct. For instance, there is a law from the European Union, and this law in the Netherlands is lower than the European Union law, and it's not aligned. So we apply the European Union law and we no longer apply the Dutch law. And that's, of course, then in hindsight, so not before the law is effective, but after it becomes effective.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah, we still have some questions. Okay. The questions. What about the people who offenses for administration? What kind of legal consequences do they get in Netherlands?
For the administrative law, you mean?
Again, let me read again. What about the people, those people who offenses for administration?
Yeah.
What kind of legal consequences that do they get in Dutch or in Netherlands?
Yeah. For instance, it could be a fine. So a financial penalty that you could get. You could also get an order to, for instance, stop a certain behavior before a particular date. And if you don't stop before that date, then you will get the fine. So then it's basically the law, you get like a warning, you get the last chance to change your behavior. And if you don't change, then you get a fine. That's also something that the administrative authorities can do. But also, for instance, if you, for instance, have a restaurant, you have a restaurant in the Netherlands, you need to have a permit. And then it means that you also have to apply some rules for the rules for restaurants, like the hygiene for the food, etc. If you don't follow these rules, then they can say, well, you no longer have a permit. That's also a kind of a punishment or a consequence. And the last thing is, for instance, if you lose your job, you can get state support. So you get money from the state because you have lost your job, so you can get support. But then, for instance, you have the duty to find another job. And if you don't do that, if you just say, well, I don't feel like searching for another job, I just will not do that, then they can also say, well, if you don't do it, we no longer give you this state support, then we stop the money, because then you will need to go and find a job. So there are various ways in which violation of the rules can have consequences in administration law. And that can be both for companies and for just the natural persons, so the people.
Okay. So means that there will be financial consequences that will apply for people who owns for administration. So
yes.
Can we know the range money that they have to pay? I mean, for financial consequences.
It is very dependent on because administration law is very broad. It can be also for instance traffic violations are administrative law. So if I drive too fast, I can get a fine. It can cost me, for instance, 1 million rupiah, 1 juta. But if I drive very hard, it can also be maybe 10 juta. It depends on the violation. For companies, sometimes they even say if you have a violation, then you need to pay a certain percentage of your profits. So if you make a lot of profit and you have to pay maybe 5% of the profit as a fine, that can be a very high amount. But it's always described in the law what the penalty is, but it can be very different things. And usually if it's for companies, it can be really high amounts.
Wow. 1 million to 10 million, or maybe more than 10 million.
Even more. Yes.
It depends on the case, yeah. It depends on the case.
So when I talked about the activities of the legal department, I was explaining about the antitrust law. If you would get a fine there, if you would look at the Google and the Facebook fines that they got, it was more like €1 billion. So that's 1 with 9 zeros and then in euro. So I don't even know if I would have to calculate the rupiah. I would not even know. But
it's a lot of money, man. It's a lot of money, of course.
Yeah. So it's I cannot give one amount. It's very different for the type of violation.
Okay, the next question still about introduction to Dutch law. Well, the question is come from Yusuf Thomas. He is the Dean of Law Faculty. And the question is, what do you think about the new principle of the hierarchy of laws and regulation? We call it lex specialis derogat legis specialiter. I don't know. Yeah, I think you know about that principle.
It means that the specific law is higher than the general law. I think it's a good principle. It was already introduced by the Romans, so that's 2000 years ago already. And it has been a principle in our law as of that time. I think there is a lot of rules that are very general, and then you can have a lot of questions about what is meant here. And then if a law is made more specific, then also you have more clarity on what the legislator actually wanted to achieve with this rule. So therefore, I would say if you have more clarity from the legislator on what is meant with this law and what the purposes of this law, then I think it's a good thing that it gets the higher status compared to the general law.
Okay, ma'am. Maybe I have one more question. One more question about ASML, about today's presentation. Let me ask about this one, ma'am. Okay, it's about rules, the rules. Okay, my question is, how about the internal rules that apply in ASML? Are there rules made by the team or how?
Yeah, so you mean probably the code of conduct as well, huh? What I talked about how we need to behave if we work in the company like ASML. Yeah, so actually the rules are made by the team of our legal and compliance department, the ethics and compliance team. They make the rules, but in the end, the board of management decides if we are going to use them. So they come up with, so they do all the work. They are thinking about, okay, what do we find important if we work in a company like ASML? What type of rules do we need to follow? And then they make a whole proposal, and that goes to the board of management. And then the board of management in the end decides, okay, we agree or we don't agree. We want to make some changes. And then indeed the rules can be finally adopted. And let me see, I was just trying to find the rules, but it's basically a very simple document with a number of rules. And it's a number of key principles. The principles are: we respect people, we operate with integrity, we commit to safety. So if you are in ASML, we want you to be safe, and social responsibility. That also links nicely to the ESG, which I explained. We protect our assets. That means our assets means that what we own as a company, we need to take care of the properties of the company. Also the very smart ideas to make these machines, we have to protect that, because otherwise other people can steal them. We don't want that. And then the last thing is, we encourage you to speak up. It means that if you see something in the company that is in violation of these principles, then the company wants you to report that, so we can make sure that we take action against it. That's basically the main rule.
All the rules, internal rules, are created or have been created by the team, legal and compliance team.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last question, or maybe I give the time for the other participants to give the questions. Maybe Dr. Juliana Ratuanak, maybe you have questions, or the other participants.
I don't have a question, but I want to say something for all of you.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Okay.
And then maybe from the other participants before we end our second day of international webinar for today.
Oh yes. I am so glad about this seminar, and for Angela Fanoembi, you are very I don't say anything about your heart and your presentation. May God bless you always, and your family in your occupational, and I want to say to Lelemuku University, successful from now to the future. Only one university in Saumlaki. May you successful and every time very good, and every day we always support you to your task and everything. Mrs. Angela, may we meet in April in Dutch. May God bless us and successfully. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Yul, for the nice words. I was very happy to give these presentations and to help also the Lelemuku University with the international seminar. And I look forward to coming back to the university, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, who knows, to visit you in person again and to see the progress you will have made by then.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Angela.
Thank you.
Your time for us. Yes.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Okay, Ma'am Fanoembi or Mrs. Fanoembi, I have one more questions. Allow me to ask about one more question. It's still about the Dutch law system in Netherlands. I have to ask, which is the most usual law in Netherlands? That useful law in Netherlands? Because as you mentioned, there are so many systems in law that apply in Netherlands, but the question is which is the most useful?
I don't know if you can say that one is more useful than the other. They all are used a lot and but they have different functions. So you have the laws that are valid between individuals, so individual persons or individual companies. It's very important because if we do business, for instance, we need to make contracts. So it's very important. If we don't have contracts, there would be no business, so no economic activity. So it's very much used and also very important, very useful. But we also need the laws between the people and the government, because we also need to all live together in this country and it all needs to be regulated by the government. So if we would not have the laws from the administrative laws, for instance, then it would be a little chaos in the country, I think. So that's also very important. We also need the criminal law, because if we don't have the criminal law, maybe people would easier steal. If they go and steal stuff and they are not punished because the criminal law is not enforced, then it would also become a little bit of chaos. So I think all the areas of the law are very important because they all have a different purpose, and we need all of it, I think.
Okay. I think we come now in at the end of this seminar. Okay, we would like to say thank you to Mrs. Fanoembi for these 2 days. You already gave us very important information and interesting presentation about introduction of Dutch law and also about ASML. And now we have a lot of information about the law system in Netherlands and also about ASML. That's one of the biggest company. And on behalf of our rector of Lelemuku University or University of Lelemuku Saumlaki, we would like to say thank you, and we hope that we will meet in the other time. I mean, maybe we can look forward for other international webinar. And then before we end this session, I would like to invite all the participants to turn on your camera because we're going to take picture. Semua kameranya boleh dinyalakan. And then our team will do screenshot. Smile or say cheese.
Keju. And don't you say keju.
Okay, keju, yeah. We can say keju. Okay, done. One more time, I think. One more time. Everyone can smile. The student, please.
To sum up to all of you.
Can you please sum up for everyone? Okay, I think that is our take picture. And then again, we would like to say thank you so much, Mrs. Fanoembi, Mrs. Angela van der Kerkhof Fanoembi, for giving us very interesting presentation. We would like to invite you again, maybe for the next or the other seminar, international seminar, and we would like to say good morning and have a great day there, and may God bless every one of us. You may leave. Okay, bye. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye. Thank you so
Goodbye.
Universitas Lelemuku Saumlaki, yang telah menjadinya yang ada bagi Bupati Putri Indonesia yang dia yang kami bawa. Semerbak